Chapter 81. As the black coffin began to tremble, everyone felt as if their hearts were being gripped. In the courtyard where the outer sect disciples resided, Chu Yang looked at the scene curiously and asked, "Teacher, who do you think will win?" "Uncertain, it depends on how much of sun-devouring emperor's inheritance has been left behind," Ink Elder replied. Heavenly Gang sword intent filled the sky, segmenting the space into countless fragments. The black coffin was also completely shattered in the midst of sword intent, and immediately after, a middle-aged man in a golden robe emerged. As the middle-aged man stepped out, it seemed as though heaven and earth were divided by his sword intent. Clasping a sword in his embrace, his golden robe crackled sharply in the cold wind, and his eyebrows, like his eyes, resembled two sharp swords. He gave the impression that he himself was a sharp sword, radiating a fierce aura to the point that many dared not stare at him for too long. It seemed that looking for too long would leave their eyes with the painful sensation of being cut by the sword's edge. "Master," White Cloud Sword Master greeted Heavenly Sword Elder with a smile. "I thought these old bones would be buried in the dust." "Blood coffin, I didn't expect us to have a day of reunion," Heavenly Sword Elder replied with a smile as he looked at White Cloud Sword Master. His voice was very loud and his laughter was somewhat deafening. "I had hoped for an eternal parting," White Cloud Sword Master said with a shake of his head and a smile. Both individuals had been slumbering in the dust blood coffin, and unless the sect gate faced a life and death crisis, they would not be awakened, and their reunion signified that the situation had reached an irremediable point. "I want to see who dares to invade my Heavenly Sword sect," Heavenly Sword Elder snorted coldly, his gaze turning to the sky where countless sword intents burst forth from his eyes. "Heavens! It's the Heavenly Sword Ancestral Master. It really is the Heavenly Sword Ancestral Master." The Heavenly Sword sect was completely astir at this moment. Although merely watching from a distance, that figure seemed etched into everyone's mind. Upon seeing the Heavenly Sword Elder and White Cloud Sword Master emerge from the coffin, all the surrounding elders greeted them respectfully. White Cloud Sword Master's gaze turned to Yubuli. Yubuli was trembling, tears of excitement in his eyes as he approached the elder with trepidation. "Master," he began softly, gazing at this elder who had left an indelible mark on his life. He had never dreamed that he would see his master again, or that he could once more call out "Master" to this elder who had cared for him like a father. "Bewley, it's been a long time," White Cloud Sword Master said with a smile. "Master, I have disappointed you," said Bewley sadly. He had failed to manage the sect properly and now had brought a formidable foe upon them, forcing the sect's ancestral master and his own master to expend their lifespans to emerge from their coffins to clean up the mess. "No, you have always done very well," White Cloud Sword Master shook his head and said, "Do you remember what I told you? Any reform and progress will be filled with setbacks and hardships and accompanied by failure and destruction. My fellows, have you finished your reunion?" Ren Pingxing stood in the sky, speaking lightly with a sarcastic chuckle. "It truly is touching." "Your Excellency is far too arrogant," Heavenly Sword Elder said, his gaze sharp, his aura at the pinnacle of the esteem vein realm surging like the sunset over a long river. He slowly raised his longsword and slashed at the sky, and this simple sword strike burst forth with a Heavenly Gang sword intent dozens of meters long. The black mist scattered and the space seemed to be cleaved in half. Ren Pingxing quenched the sword intent with a punch, but his right hand trembled slightly, numb from the shock of the sword strike. "Given that it's already a matter of life and death for the sect gate, there's no need to bother with any notions of heroic fair play," said the Heavenly Sword Elder with a glance at the White Cloud Sword Master. The two exchanged a nod. Then they attacked Ren Pingxing together, not caring about their reputations at this critical moment, but choosing to surround and attack before they entered the dust blood coffin to sleep. They had also been figures of renown. The two of them ganging up on one person was something they internally despised, but at that moment, they cast aside their own reputations, doing everything for the sake of the sect. The Heavenly Sword Elder walked on air, and with each step he took, the sword intent emanating from him grew a bit stronger. When he was walking in the air, facing Ren Pingxing from a distance, the sword intent around him had already condensed into the shape of a long dragon. The dragon roared across the plains, tearing the firmament and intimidating the vast sky. As for the White Cloud Sword Master, he took one step upon a white cloud, as if all things in the world were evolving amidst the gathering and dispersing clouds, bathed in the autumn. Wind, he seemed like a hermit untainted by worldly desires, with a horsetail whisk in hand. He lightly waved it, and then the wooging void fell into fragmentation and silence. The three stood at a distance, their auras faintly merging into one. Renpingsheng unleashed the sun-devouring demon fist, each punch wide and bold, with demonic chi billowing as if to shatter the entire sky, while the heavenly sword elder, his heavenly gang sword intent was mastered to perfection, his long sword cutting through the still void, his momentum vast like the sea, managing Renpingsheng's assaults with ease. As for the white cloud sword master, he wielded his horsetail whisk, clouds coalescing and mountains stacking with each strike that seemed light and breezy. But when Renpingsheng came into contact with his horsetail whisk, that great force nearly sent him flying away. Under the combined assault of the heavenly sword elder and the white cloud sword master, it wasn't long before Renpingsheng struggled to hold on. His black robe was torn apart, and his body was covered with dense scars, although he was still persisting with gritted teeth. He already appeared to be hanging on by a thread. The heavenly sword elder spotted the opportunity, his long sword carrying a heaven-shaking brilliance, and chopped directly towards Renpingsheng's abdomen. Renpingsheng dodged in haste, his black clothes thoroughly shattered before he could even catch his breath. The white cloud sword master's horsetail whisk had already struck his back. He felt an overwhelming force from behind, and then his whole body plummeted towards the ground with a boom. Renpingsheng's body violently smashed into the ground, creating a deep pit as dust flew up and the earth trembled. The ground, already full of scars, was further marred by several cracks. Seeing this, the others from the heavenly sword sect finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although this man is formidable, he is still no match for our ancestral master. The heavenly sword elder and white cloud sword master looked down at the deep pit on the ground. As the dust settled, the scene within became clear. Renpingsheng lay in the pit covered in blood, not a single spot on his body untouched. The mad wind howled around, and the trunks of the weeping willows on either side, affected by the cracks, were bent down in the mad wind. The willows swayed as if they were demons and monsters. Renpingsheng propped up his weakened body and slowly stood up. He coughed a few times and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, his entire person completely drenched in red, indifferent to the hateful gazes from those of the heavenly sword sect around him. He slowly pulled a black axe from his storage ring. Chapter 82. When the black axe appeared at that moment, heaven and earth fell into silence. Ubuli, who had studied the life of the sun-devouring emperor in detail, looked shocked and said with a trembling voice, "The sun-devouring axe. What is the sun-devouring axe?" An elder asked curiously. "Great Emperor's true artifacts," Ubuli replied succinctly, but it was just these 4 words that caused everyone present to turn pale. Only weapons that are inscribed with the Emperor's pattern and tempered by destiny can be called Great Emperor's true artifacts. Usually, a great emperor can choose to temper 2 weapons with destiny while bearing it. One is their innate true weapon, which refers to the weapon that has been with the great emperor since their youth, accompanying them in battle and growing alongside them. Like Su Zaimai's Tyrant Shadow, Chu Yang's Wandering Dragon Sword, typically a great emperor would take their innate true weapon with them after ascending. There is another weapon that the great emperor replicates based on their innate true weapon and then inscribes with the emperor pattern and tempers with destiny. This kind of weapon is known as the great emperor's true artifact and is left behind for future generations. The power of a great emperor's true artifact surpasses that of universe-tier weapons. It is second only to the innate true weapon. Keep in mind that the emperor pattern and destiny tempering are beyond what ordinary weapons can compare to. Only a great emperor personally undertaking the process will suffice. When the sun-devouring axe appeared within the courtyard where the outer sect disciples resided, the reincarnation elder inside the ring shouted at Chu Yang, "Run, quickly run, leave the heavenly sword sect." "What's wrong, teacher?" Chu Yang asked with some confusion. "That's a great emperor's true artifact. With that guy's current strength holding a great emperor's true artifact, he fears not even those strong with the emperor pulse. He's enough to destroy the entire heavenly sword sect." The reincarnation elder said urgently, "If we don't leave now, everyone will end up buried with them." Then I'll go inform my master, Chu Yang said, looking over at Yubuli on a distant mountaintop. There's no time. With the strength I've recovered so far, I can't protect you, Reincarnation Elder hurriedly said. You need to leave quickly, otherwise no one will escape. But my master has also been very good to me. If I just leave like this, it wouldn't be very righteous, Chu Yang said hesitantly. You should think about it the other way around. If you don't leave now, everyone will die, including the disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect and your master, who will avenge them. Ink Elder explained, if you leave now and grow to be strong one day, you can avenge them. That is the best way to repay them. Hearing the words of the Reincarnation Elder, Chu Yang still felt reluctant. Watching Ren Pingsheng taking to the skies again, the sun-devouring axe was raised above his head, covering the whole sky with demonic chi in the depths of the clouds. The demonic chi rolled and the dark fog was pervasive, as if heralding the end of days. Teacher, if you lend your power to me like that time on Black Water Peak, and with the cooperation of the White Cloud Sword Master and the Heavenly Sword Ancestral Master, is there a chance we could defeat that guy? Yang, you still don't understand what I mean, Reincarnation Elder sighed. Even today, not to mention the three of us, even if 3 Emperor Pulse powerhouses descended, it would be of no use. Unless someone possesses a great Emperor's true artifact of the same kind. Just a weapon, is it really that powerful? Chu Yang said incredulously as he watched Ren Pingsheng's momentum grow stronger in the sky. Do you think it's just as simple as a weapon? Reincarnation Elder lamented, everything has a spirit, whether it be flowers, grass, trees, humans, or monster beasts, even a sword, a piece of scrap iron. Once inscribed with the Emperor pattern and tempered by destiny by the hands of a great Emperor, it is no longer just a simple weapon. You could even say it has broken free from its shackles and could be considered half a living being. Above the Heavenly Sword sect, the dark fog grew thicker, nearly covering the entire sky, so dense that not a trace of sunlight could be seen. A streak of black light shot from the sun-devouring axe towards the sky, followed by a wind that swept up the clouds as demonic chi erupted violently. Kukuku, a fierce and terrifying face conjured from the demonic chi, coalesced in the air. Who has awakened me? A resounding, elevated voice exploded in midair. Senior, I am a descendant of the sun-devouring ancestor, Ren Pingsheng hurriedly said. The descendant of the great sun-devouring ancestor? The face formed from the black fog looked at Ren Pingsheng for a long time before it finally sensed the bloodline's aura from him. Since you are a descendant, according to the agreement, you have 10 opportunities to gain my power. After the 10 times, I shall be free. The face in the black fog spoke slowly. Great Emperor's true artifacts also possess spirits, and in terms of thinking and intelligence, they are not inferior to humans, even if it was the great emperors who endowed them with everything. This does not mean that they should be eternally controlled by the descendants of great emperors. If the price of being gifted sentience is losing their freedom and becoming nothing more than others' tools for slaughter, then these artifact spirits would rather be annihilated, as this is their last pride. Therefore, the successive great emperors would always strike deals with the artifact spirits. The spirits would help the descendants of great emperors 10 times. And after those 10 times, they could leave and gain their freedom. Of course, not all great emperors' true artifacts choose to leave their emperor's descendants after 10 times, especially for a force like the true martial holy sect. They would make deals with the artifact spirits, providing resources for the spirits' cultivation, and in return, the spirits would help the sect when needed. As for the case of Ren Pingsheng, with the Ren family in decline, those artifact spirits certainly would not want to stay. Looking at the sky now shrouded in darkness, both the Heavenly Sword Elder and the White Cloud Sword Master saw the gravity in each other's eyes. Master, this may well be the last time we fight side by side, the White Cloud Sword Master said with a carefree smile. Dying under a great emperor's true artifact is better than withering away in the dust-blood coffin. The Heavenly Sword Elder laughed heartily. For beings like them, life and death were long put aside. The only reason they still clung to life inside the dust-blood coffin was to contribute their last bit of strength to the sect. Yubuli was busy with the other elders quickly dispersing the disciples, hoping to save as many as possible. Chu Yang looked at the now chaotic sect and shook his head with a bitter smile. His expression tinged with sadness. Though his time here was not very long, he had grown fond of this place, treating it as his home. Chu Yang knew he couldn't change anything as he was too weak now. After a few moments of contemplation, Chu Yong didn't dare to linger any longer and was about to leave when he saw Yu Bewley suddenly approaching him, walking on air. Master Yu? Chu Yong curiously looked at Yu Bewley, wondering why he was seeking him out specifically. If the sect is destroyed today, then all the responsibility lies with me. I am the eternal criminal of the sect, and also of this catastrophe. I hope you will take me as a shame, Yu Bewley said earnestly to Chu Yong. Although we have not known each other for a long time, I believe I have not misjudged you. If you achieve something in the future, I hope you can revive our sect. Yu Bewley said this and took off his right-hand ring, handing it to Chu Yong. This is the sect leader's ring if you are willing. Then from now on, you are the 4th sect master of the Heavenly Sword sect. If you are not willing, that's fine. Everyone has their own ambitions. Follow your heart and let nothing bind you. Chapter 83. Chu Yong fell silent for a moment, then slowly took the ring and said resolutely, Master, if there ever comes a day when I achieve something great, I will make sure the name of the Heavenly Sword is known throughout the entire extreme west region. Yu Bewley laughed heartily, glanced up at the imposing Renpingsheng in the sky, slapped Chu Yang's shoulder, and said contentedly, Go quickly, or it will be too late. Master, aren't you leaving? Chu Yong asked. I will live or die with the sect gate. Yu Bewley shook his head. The trouble was caused by me, and it will surely subside with my sacrifice. The cost is just too great. Yu Bewley sighed, looking at the battered sect gate. Damn it, this was built with the effort of several generations. Watching Chu Yang's retreating figure, he looked back longingly at the world one last time, then soared into the air and charged towards Renpingsheng. After the power of the Emperor pattern and destiny had been bestowed upon him, Renpingsheng seemed like a demonic titan descended from the heavens, standing tall between earth and sky, his sun-devouring axe enveloped by a vast expanse of black air. With one swing of the axe, mountains shattered, space fractured, and all things vanished into oblivion. The space at the edge of the sky was violently torn open, and the rent space continued for several minutes without healing. The endless demonic chi, carrying the spatial turbulence within the torn space, turned the whole world topsy-turvy. The longsword wielded by the Heavenly Sword Elder clashed with the sun-devouring axe and immediately sparked. In just a moment, the longsword shattered into pieces. The ethereal aura that had once surrounded White Cloud Sword Master was gone as he wrapped his horsetail whisk around the sun-devouring axe, attempting to pull it towards him, but the endless demonic chi immediately engulfed his horsetail whisk, causing White Cloud Sword Master's expression to turn to one of shock. He quickly retreated to one side with the Heavenly Sword Elder. With just a simple move, the weapons of the two had been destroyed. Renpingsheng raised the sun-devouring axe high above his head, and in the span of a single breath, the axe head grew several times larger. Clouds of demonic chi rolled across the sky, all the black fog converging together, following the trajectory of the giant axe as if guided by it, like meteors falling from the sky. They all plummeted towards the grounds of the Heavenly Sword sect. Countless boom 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 sounds exploded on the ground, accompanied by violent collisions of demonic chi. The glory of the Heavenly Sword sect, which had shone for hundreds of years, was completely destroyed in an instant. Dust filled the air, and all came to a close. The Heavenly Sword Elder, with eyes red and filled with tears, looked at the utterly destroyed sect gate, watching the Heavenly Sword Elder, White Cloud Sword Master, and Yu Bewley all charge at him recklessly. Renpingsheng's expression remained indifferent. Amidst the aftermath of the destruction, a reflection of his own Ren family being annihilated in the past seemed to dance before his eyes. He slowly swung the enormous sun-devouring axe in his hand, and then everything returned to silence. A gentle breeze blew in from afar, the black fog in the sky already dissipated, and a few white clouds stood out against the azure sky. The world was very still. So still that it seemed even the heartbeat could be heard, as if the cataclysmic battle that had just occurred had never happened. If it wasn't for the smoky ruin on the ground, now a wasteland of a sect gate, people might never be able to imagine the intensity of the battle. Renpingsheng stood on the edge of the sky, gazing at the setting sun that was gradually fading away. Tears fell from the corners of his eyes. Vengeance has been exacted, but why do I not feel the slightest bit of joy, and instead feel such oppression in my heart? He descended from the sky, standing amidst the ruins at the very center, gazing at the handiwork of his own creation with severe injuries still on him. He took some pills to stabilize his condition for the moment before he left the Heavenly Sword sect to find a place to heal. After leaving the Heavenly Sword sect, Chu Yang continued westward, the black fog behind him falling like meteors. He ran desperately westward, but the black fog moved at an incredible speed and the explosive range was very wide. After dodging several clusters of black fog, he was eventually hit by one. At the moment when the black fog struck him, Chu Yang activated the Azure Cloud Battle Body. A red-blue hue spread over his entire body, and above his forehead appeared a vortex symbol with the light of life flowing between his hair. Even his ears became elf-like, becoming elongated and sharp. Then he was hit by the black fog and became completely unconscious. Unsure how much time had passed, Chu Yang gradually awoke from his coma. His entire body felt a bit sore and weak, but fortunately there was no injury. Chu Yang knew that it was thanks to the Azure Cloud Battle Body, which not only increased his overall strength but also came with a built-in battle body skill, Light of Life. It could quickly heal his own wounds. He surveyed his current surroundings and seemed to be at the bottom of a cliff. Chu Yang remembered there indeed was a cliff near the Heavenly Sword sect. Black water streamed past him, with the surrounding trees lush and verdant. Chu Yang suddenly realized that life sometimes truly holds fateful encounters, for the river in front of him was the Black Water River. The Black Water River spanned the entire extreme west region, said to have one end in the center of the eastern continent. He had previously fought for the Azure Cloud Battle Body on Black Water Peak, and now he found himself seeing the Black Water River once again. "Yang, are you all right?" the reincarnation elder asked with concern from within the ring. "I'm fine, thanks to the Azure Cloud Battle Body, but I fear for the others from the sect gate." Chu Yang fell silent for a moment, deeply sighing. "Don't think too much, let's get out of here first," said the reincarnation elder. Chu Yang nodded, glancing at the sect leader's ring on his right hand. He knew it represented a heavy responsibility. After briefly scanning the surroundings, Chu Yang was about to follow the river flow of the Black Water River, but he noticed a very concealed cave entrance on the cliff face in front of him. The entrance was covered by vines, and due to the lack of living creatures for many years, wild grass had overgrown the area. If not for his good luck, he might not have discovered the cave entrance. Chu Yang pondered for a moment, then picked up a stone from the bank and threw it into the cave to check for dangers. After confirming there was no movement inside, he drew out the wandering dragon sword, and with the longsword's spiritual energy surging, he quickly cut through the vines. Chu Yang walked into the cave entrance, where the light was somewhat dim and the space was not very large, looking like it was man-made. Inside the cave was empty, with only a stone table in the center, upon which sat a very ancient book. It was covered in dust, which Chu Yang blew off before gently picking up the book. The yellowed cover bore only one large character: "Forget." "What's this? It doesn't look like a cultivation technique or vein skills," murmured Chu Yang. However, this single character, "Forget," seemed to carry some special significance. He slowly turned to the first page of the book, and after looking at it for a long time, he realized it was an autobiography. Chapter 84. My name is the Forgetful Taoist, born in a very ordinary village in the extreme west region. When I was 6 years old, my parents died of serious illnesses, leaving me alone and desolate, clinging to my frail body, crawling up the mountain near our village. On the mountain was a Taoist temple whose master pitied me and took me in as a disciple. At the age of 15, on my way down the mountain, I found a glowing orb. After taking this orb into my hand, it turned into a pill exuding a fragrant aroma. I was young and could not resist the temptation, so I swallowed the pill. From then on, my life underwent earth-shattering changes. After returning to the Taoist temple, all my fellow disciples no longer recognized me. Even the temple master who initially took me in had no impression of me whatsoever. I wondered if I had been forgotten by the world. I left the Taoist temple and began my years of wandering. Later in life, I discovered that things were far worse than I had imagined. Not only was I forgotten by people, but even the things I touched would be forgotten. I ate a bun at a stall, and the vendor had no recollection of ever selling me a bun. I broke a branch off a tree, and almost instantly the tree would grow back a new branch as if it had forgotten the one I had broken off. With age, this forgetting became more and more apparent. I began to forget how to smile. And I also began to forget sadness. Or rather, it was the smile that forgot me. And sadness, too. had forgotten me. I stabbed myself with a sword, but it seemed as if I couldn't feel the pain. I knew that pain had forgotten me, too. I saw people my age dying one by one, while I just aged a bit. It seemed that even time was slowly forgetting me. Later, I learned that the orb I swallowed in my youth was called the Forgotten Dust Pearl. It's the fourth-ranked existence on the list of wonders of the world. There are only two forgotten dust pearls in the world. One is the Yang Pearl, and the other is the Yin Pearl. The Yang Pearl was obtained by the Forgotten Dust Emperor of the past, while the Yin Pearl was swallowed by me. To break the curse of forgetting brought by the Forgotten Dust Pearl, there are only two methods. One is to gather both the Yin and Yang Forgotten Dust Pearls and take them together, which could not only change the fate of being forgotten, but also completely master the great Yin-Yang path. The other method is to carry destiny and ascend as a great emperor. I know my talent is limited. With the Yang Pearl in the hands of the Forgotten Dust Emperor, I have no hope. As for carrying destiny, it's even more absurd and pitiful. I went to Dragon City and obtained 10 sheets of indestructible paper to record the events of my life, which can be considered the only proof that I was once in this world. From now on, I will travel the entire Yuan central continent, dying slowly in loneliness and desolation. After reading this autobiography, Chuyang slowly closed the book and pondered for a long time, feeling deep sympathy for this predecessor's plight. "Teacher, have you ever heard of the Forgetful Taoist?" asked Chuyang. "No, probably some odd and remarkable person," replied the reincarnation elder. "Since this is that predecessor's autobiography, let's leave it here, hoping that more people in the future will know of this predecessor's existence," Chuyang said with a smile, placing the book on the stone table and preparing to leave. Suddenly, the book emitted a white light, and immediately after, countless words appeared within the light. Chuyang watched the words. His pupils suddenly constricting. The word "forget" on the cover of the autobiography flew out and directly entered Chuyang's forehead. He hastily sat in a cross-legged position, perceiving the essence of the character for "forget." A long while later, the book unexpectedly turned into dust and dissipated in the air. Chuyang slowly opened his eyes, only to find that the book had concealed a vain skill within. For styles of forgotten dust, regrettably, among the 4 styles of forgotten dust, only one style was recorded in the book, eternal resentment. Ordinary vain skills belong to active skills, requiring the martial artist to deploy them. But this 4 styles of forgotten dust seemed more akin to a passive skill, already integrated with Chuyang. One of the 4 styles of forgotten dust, eternal resentment, was meant to help Chuyang forget pain from now on. No matter how severe his wounds, he would not feel any pain. Of course, forgetting does not mean the injuries are non-existent. They are still present, and he would die without treatment. The skill could only help Chuyang forget the sensation of pain. Chuyang drew his wandering dragon sword and slashed his arm, leaving a bloody mark, yet he felt no pain at all. "I've really forgotten," Chuyang said in astonishment, looking at his wound and murmuring with a hint of joy. "Yang, this is your opportunity," the reincarnation elder said with a smile. "I wonder what the other 3 styles of the 4 styles of forgotten dust are? Forgetting time, forgetting oneself." Chuyang mused. At first glance, eternal resentment didn't seem to increase combat power, but in reality, its utility was quite significant. When one is gravely injured, their combat power greatly diminishes. The primary reason is, naturally, the weakness of the body. Another is that engaging in battle with severe injuries can tear the wounds open, with the nerves transmitting the pain to your brain. Every movement would bring agonizing pain, inevitably reducing combat effectiveness. As the saying goes, in a narrow path the braver wins, and Chuyang felt that with eternal resentment, a passive vain skill, he had an absolute advantage over opponents of the same level. Meanwhile, within the true martial holy sect, Yen Buhui had recovered somewhat after several days of recuperation. After much deliberation, he dragged his weakened body to Goose Southern Peak. "You want my help?" Su Zime looked at Yen Buhui with interest and asked with a smile. "Yes, you don't need to help me annihilate the Huang family. Just help me stay in the true martial holy sect. I will settle the score with the Huang family myself in the future. Yen Buhui stated he knew that while he bore the name of a disciple of the true martial holy sect, people of the Huang family did not dare to confront him openly, but once he was expelled from the sect gate, what awaited him was an endless pursuit. He was not afraid of death. He only wanted to seek justice for his mother and himself. To annihilate the Huang family and then die was of no consequence to him. Why should I help you? Su Zime asked, a smile lingering at the corner of his mouth. I'm willing to be a sword in your hands. Yen Buhui gazed at Su Zime and said earnestly, or you can name your condition. Aside from my own sword, I am willing to agree to any terms. Yen Buhui knew he had no other choice. He was willing to entrust his life to Su Zime. That was all the chips he had. Become my subordinate when I embrace my destiny. I will appoint you as war generals. That in itself is a great honor. Don't talk as if I'm taking advantage of you. Su Zime replied with a laugh. Yen Buhui looked at Su Zime, unsure where his confidence came from. Destiny has yet to emerge. The extreme west region is merely a corner of the eastern continent. Not to mention the other continents. Just the vast expanse of the central continent is a barrier many cannot cross in their lifetimes. Chapter 85. Moreover, in this Yuan central continent, many imperial rule immortal sects are even stronger in heritage than the true martial holy sect. Yen Buhui glanced at Su Zime but didn't say much more. After all, he was the one seeking help at the moment. You are still too weak. Grow up sooner rather than later, Su Zime said with a faint smile. Otherwise, even serving under me would be of no use. I understand. I will work hard. Yen Buhui nodded. Not just for you, but also to strive for the downfall of the Huang family. Go with me here. Xiaoxing you won't be able to stir up much trouble. Su Zime nodded and said, Thank you. Yen Buhui took a deep look at Su Zime, then turned and left. Afterward, Su Zime called for Xiao Gizi, and gazing into the distance at the setting sun, he said with a light smile, Spread some news to the outer sect. Say that Yen Buhui is now our man, and whoever dares to target him is also targeting me. Also, let them be clear about one thing, the surname of the one who wields authority in this sect gate is Su, not Xiao. I understand. Xiao Gizi nodded and then left in the following days. Su Zime remained on Goose Southern Peak cultivating, and a few days later, Shirley Chongkong also arrived within the true martial holy sect. Has Huang Tianxie left? Su Zime asked in surprise. Shirley Chongkong nodded and said, Young master, I failed to assassinate him. He had at least 2 guards at the esteemed Vane realm by his side. No matter, it was just a warning to him, but his early departure is indeed beyond my expectation, Su Zime muttered while stroking his chin. Actually, even if he had stayed in the sect, it would have been pointless since you have spoken. Not one of the top 10 disciples on the hidden tiger list dares or is willing to get involved in this turmoil, Xiao Gizi explained from the side. Xiao Xingyu is also powerless, so he had to let Huang Tianxie leave first. Su Zime nodded. He knew that Xiao Xingyu, just like himself, didn't hold much real power and was merely posturing under the title of the Great Elder. However, Xiao Xingyu had one advantage over him, as he possessed emperor-level talent, a condition that would be powerful in the struggle to become the Saint Heir. Therefore, he had aspects that were worth others' investment, whereas Su Zime, due to rarely revealing himself, was not very memorable to others. How are things going in Zhoukei City? Su Zime inquired, looking at Shirley Chongkong. Following your suggestion, Situ Yunqing is preparing to open branches in the form of restaurants to spread our information network throughout the Yuan central continent, Shirley Chongkong said. Situ Restaurant has recently opened in several neighboring cities. Her next step is to expand the restaurants to the capital of the Purple Sun Empire, including the Greenwood Empire, to secure the extreme west before proceeding. The progress is good, but tell her to also cultivate her own personnel to prevent the infiltration of those with ulterior motives. Su Zime nodded and instructed. After sending Shirley Chongkong off, Xiao Gizi also brought news Yuba's talent had been ruined in the outer sect of the true martial holy sect. Some disciples, due to inadequate talent or personal effort, failed to enter the inner sect on time and were expelled by the sect. This was called survival of the fittest. Some disciples on the verge of leaving were willing to take desperate risks. Shao Gizi found one such disciple, promising cultivation resources, then had that disciple ruin Yuba's talent. Once that disciple had left the true martial holy sect, even if the deed was exposed, there was no need for fear after all. The extreme west was vast. If someone chose to hide, the true martial holy sect was not guaranteed to find them. Moreover, the sect wouldn't expend so much effort for just an outer sect disciple. Thus, the disciple accepted Shao Gizi's commission, and after ruining Yuba's talent, he intended to flee with the materials, free as a bird, away from the true martial holy sect. But he was killed by Shao Gizi after all. Only the dead can keep secrets best. As for Yuba's master, the inner sect elder was furious upon learning of the incident, conducted an investigation, and finally found the dead body of the outer sect disciple, at which point the trail went cold. The inner sect elder did what was morally right and sent Yubo, who had fallen to the status of an ordinary person, away from the sect gate. However, after Ji Baiyu found out about this, she made a special trip to Goose Southern Peak to thank Suzuma. Suzume graciously accepted the thanks and increased her monthly allowance of Feiyu crystals from 500 to 1,000 in the end. Ji Baiyu left Goose Southern Peak with a mix of anger, grievance, and various other emotions. 2 days later, the day for the sect to go to the Holy Spring sect arrived. The seventh elder was in charge of leading the team, and the accompanying disciples included Suzume and Shao Gizi, as well as the seventh elder's direct disciple, Luong, who was known as one of the 10,000 arrays' 5 disciples and specialized in killing arrays, and Kai Yufei, the direct disciple of the sixth elder. Early that morning, they gathered at the Imperial Heaven Pavilion within the sect, where the sect's holy vessels and flying shuttles were kept. Traditionally, sects would travel on flying monster beasts, and the true martial holy sect used to do the same. However, during the era of the divine travel great emperor, he ordered the creation of these ship-like holy vessels and flying shuttles. At that time, the divine travel great emperor personally researched flying formations, inscribing them onto the holy vessels, and then using spirit crystals to power flight. Later, the divine travel great emperor integrated the spirit gathering array, allowing the holy vessels to autonomously absorb spiritual energy from the air during flight and become self-sufficient, which greatly reduced the consumption of spirit crystals. Since then, these holy vessels had become a symbol of status for many great sects. The seventh elder, dressed in a white garment, with his hair tidily bound in a topknot, looked just like an ordinary scholar. He always appeared so composed and scholarly. If one did not know him, it would be hard to associate him with a powerful Saint Vein Realm cultivator. His direct disciple, Luong, on the other hand, exuded an imposing aura, dressed in a purple robe with the atmosphere of the esteemed Vein Realm swirling around him. A circular array plate was carried on his back, and a curved blade hung at his waist. As for Kai Yufei, the direct disciple of the sixth elder, she could be considered a top-tier beauty. She wore a tight-fitting white blouse that perfectly displayed her curvaceous figure, with ear-length hair and a 3-foot green blade hanging at her waist. Her appearance was marked with a bold spirit rather than the fragility typical of most women. "Now that everyone is here, let's set off," said the seventh elder, looking at the crowd. The massive holy vessel was several tens of meters long, its body curving in a flowing design, incredibly dazzling to behold. Colored in golden yellow, the holy vessel's shape was similar to a ship, but appeared much more exquisite and majestic. The group boarded the vessel, and as the sound of rumbling emerged, the holy vessel soared into the sky like a streak of aurora. Chapter 86. The azure sky appeared exceptionally clear, with clumps of white clouds floating above. The holy vessel's speed was extremely fast, swiftly parting the airflows on both sides. After the holy vessel soared into the sky and stabilized, Elder 7 finally evened out its velocity, moving at a steady pace toward the Holy Spring sect. Several people stood at the edge of the holy vessel, exuding an air as if they were poised atop the highest peak, looking down on all the mountains below. The blue of the sky was so incredibly deep that it seemed unbelievable, and the clouds felt as if they were within reach. The scenery was beautiful, but it became somewhat monotonous after a while, and one could gradually grow weary of it. Fair, It's windy outside, you should come here and rest for a bit, Luong suggested with a smile, pointing to the central resting area of the holy vessel. Thank you, Senior Brother Lu, Kai Yufei replied with a cool nod. 4 of them sat in the resting area, while Elder 7 returned to his room. Feier, have you been busy lately? There was a market in the town below our sect gate last time, and when I invited you to go out, you didn't come, Luong said warmly, looking at Kai Yufei. I usually need to cultivate, and am not too interested in things unrelated to cultivation. Kai Yufei shook her head and added, also, Senior Brother Lu, I hope you can call me Junior Sister Kai next time. Luong gave a polite yet awkward smile in response to Kai Yufei's cool reply. He glanced at Su Zime, seeming to want to defuse the awkwardness, and cheerfully said, Junior Brother Su, I heard you've only started cultivating recently. If there's anything you don't understand about cultivation, feel free to ask your senior brother at any time. Su Zime, who had been leaning on a chair with his eyes half closed wanting to catch some sleep, nodded at Luong's words and said, Senior Brother, as it happens I do have a question I'd like to ask you. What's the question? Luong asked, puzzled. Tell me, if the girl you like doesn't like you back, would you give up straight away? Or would you hang around her like a lapdog? After saying this, Su Zime sneakily glanced at Kai Yufei. Well, Luong coughed a few times, then sighed and said, Junior Brother, you can tell you've never been in love. When you have someone you like, you'll understand. If you don't really like her, who would be willing to act like a lapdog? Moreover, it's not like I don't have suitors. A bunch of junior sisters and senior sisters in the sect chase after me, but am just loyal to one, devoted solely to Feier. Kai Yufei rolled her eyes from the side. Men really can be shameless sometimes. I don't quite agree with your view, Senior Brother. Even if I like someone in the future, I would never become a lapdog. Su Zime shook his head as he spoke. If you don't go after her, are you going to let the person you like just slip away? Luong asked. Puzzled Kai Yufei also looked curiously at Su Zime from the side. Not at all. I quite agree with Ruha's view. Su Zime shook his head and said, if the person I like doesn't like me back, I would just take the overlord approach. If once doesn't work, then 10 times, and if 10 times don't work, then 100 times. A melon forced off its vine may not be sweet, but it can still quench thirst. Although that sounds weird, it seems like rough words with reasonable logic. Luong looked at Su Zime excitedly saying, Junior Brother, a word from you is worth 10 years of study. It seems your senior brother has gained some insight. Shameless, Kai Yufei snorted coldly and then walked straight into the interior of the holy vessel, not wanting to stay with the others. Afterward, Luong dragged Su Zime into a discussion about some embarrassing topics. Su Zime now realized that although this guy seemed serious on the surface, in his heart he was incredibly reserved and lecherous. Just as the two were eagerly discussing, a faint bird call reached their ears. Su Zime looked up to see a huge Tsang Wan flying with its wings spread beside the holy vessel. This Tsang Wan was entirely white and half the size of the holy vessel, its wings spreading with an aura that almost seemed to blot out the sky. Its feathers were extremely sharp, with the tail plumes displaying patterns of cyan and red. Its neck was slender and proud, crowned with a golden crest on its head. On the back of this Tsang Wan, there stood a line of people at this moment. In total, there were 5 individuals, all dressed in fluttering white robes, standing on the Tsang Wan with an ethereal grace like celestial maidens descended to the mortal realm. Is this holy vessel perhaps a companion of the true martial holy sect? Asked a woman from the very front of the Tsang Wan. She was the leader of this group, seeming somewhat older than the few girls beside her, but very well maintained. Without closer inspection, one might even mistake her for a young maiden. I am the 7th elder of the true martial holy sect. Elder Fanyan is welcome to come down and meet, said the 7th elder, walking out from the holy vessel and speaking up at this time. So it is Elder Tianjin. A voice came from atop the Tsang Wan, followed by the sight of the gigantic Tsang Wan slowly descending. Who are these people? Xiao Gizi asked curiously. They should be from the Immortal Spirits sect. It seems the Holy Spring sect's inner gate competition this time has also invited them, Luong said in a low voice. The Immortal Spirit sect was also considered a first-rate force in the extreme west region, founded by the Ancestor of Wind. It was said that the Ancestor of Wind was the wife of the Dustless Emperor, And although the Immortal Spirit sect was not part of the Dustless Emperor's forces, there were rumors that within the sect gate there were great Emperor's true artifacts left by the Dustless Emperor. As for whether this was true or not, no one knew. One point of difference for the Immortal Spirit sect was that the sect gate only recruited female disciples. They never sought male disciples, and moreover, every generation's saintess of the sect gate could not marry a man. The Tsang descended from the sky, and the Immortal Spirit sect had brought a total of 5 individuals this time. Aside from Elder Fanyun, the other 4 women were all wearing white dresses with light blue washing silk veils over them. After the introductions, Suzume also came to know that among these 4 female disciples, one of them was actually the saintess of this generation for the Immortal Spirit sect. This was beyond his expectations. He remembered that in his previous life, when he had gone to the Holy Spring sect, the saintess of the Immortal Spirit sect had not come. It seemed that some things really had experienced a butterfly effect, but anyway, he also had to be cautious. To become the saintess meant that the Immortal Spirit sect would fully support this woman in this era to compete for destiny. Even if she failed in the struggle for destiny, she would still have the opportunity to vie for the position of sect master in the Immortal Spirit sect. The woman's name was Nya Xingqing, a name Suzume had heard in his previous life but had never met her. The space on the holy vessel was very spacious, and the 7th elder seemed to be enjoying a pleasant conversation with Elder Fanyun from the opposite side. Luong, sitting beside Suzume, looked at the 4 women of the Immortal Spirit sect and let out a disheartened sigh. They all look quite good. It's a pity they joined the Immortal Spirit sect. What does that matter? As far as I remember, only the saintess is forbidden to marry. The other female disciples can, right? Suzume said with a smile. But the key issue is that once they join, they're not allowed to marry out, Luong replied, shaking his head regretfully. Chapter 87. Hello, junior sisters. Luong greeted with a smile, walking up with Suzume to the 4 female disciples of the Immortal Spirit sect. Hello, senior brother. Nya Xingqing and the other 3 female disciples also smiled and greeted in return. However, Nya Xingqing's emotions didn't look very good, and her complexion was somewhat pale. All of you junior sisters came to watch the Holy Spring sect's inner gate competition, right? Luong said as he sat down nearby and asked. I was just on my way home. Nya Xingqing shook her head and responded. Where is junior sister's home? Luong asked with a smile. A place that could raise a talented disciple like junior sister must be extraordinary. Heavenly Sword Sect, Nya Xingqing answered with a somewhat cold voice. Luong was taken aback and subconsciously asked, Is it the same Heavenly Sword Sect that was annihilated a while ago? As soon as the words left his mouth, Luong realized he had been too blunt and quickly explained, Junior sister, I didn't mean anything by that. It's nothing that can't be spoken of. I also only received the news not long ago. Nya Xingqing shook her head and said. Meanwhile, Suzume reflected for a moment. The destruction of the Heavenly Sword Sect made him think of Rinpingsheng first, in his previous life. After Rinpingsheng obtained the inheritance of the Sun-devouring Emperor, he too swiftly annihilated the Heavenly Sword Sect in this life. He had told Rinpingsheng about the inheritance of the Sun-devouring Emperor ahead of time. Did it also mean that the demise of the Heavenly Sword Sect was brought forward? Suzume was not sure now, but he could only wait and see at the Heavenly Sword Sect. May I ask, junior sister, what is your relationship with the Heavenly Sword Sect? Suzume asked out of curiosity. He didn't know much about Nya Xingqing, and in his previous life, he truly didn't know about her connection with the Heavenly Sword Sect. Yu Buli, the sect master of the Heavenly Sword Sect, is my adoptive father. Nya Xingqing pondered for a moment before replying softly. After talking for a while, Suzume more or less understood the situation. It happened decades ago. One day when Yu Buli was leaving the sect gate, he found a baby at the doorstep. The baby was just a month old, likely abandoned, and Yu Buli decided to adopt the baby since he had no offspring of his own. As the baby grew day by day, she turned into an extraordinary and talented girl. Yu Buli felt that keeping her confined to the Heavenly Sword Sect would waste her talents. At the age of 18, he sent her to the Immortal Spirit Sect, the largest female sect in the extreme west region. The holy vessel descended slowly over the airspace of the heavenly sword sect. Its massive body compressed the air, creating a clashing pressure that then exploded. According to Nie Xingqing, if there were survivors from the heavenly sword sect, she would stay with the sect. If it had been completely annihilated, she would follow the others to the holy spring sect. When the holy vessel descended not far above the heavenly sword sect, several people leaped down from it, including the seventh elder and Elder Fan Yun from the other side. The land was in ruins, and countless cracks seemed to bear witness to the intensity of the great battle. In the sect, various monster beasts were active, gnawing at bodies that were dead or even beginning to rot. Nie Xingqing released her empty vein realm energy, and a streak of purple light shot from her hand, killing several monster beasts in an instant. Seeing this, the other monster beasts fled far away. It's all gone. Nie Xingqing stood in the very center of the ruins as scenes of familiar days echoed before her eyes. It was the happiest memory of her childhood, whether it was her foster father, the senior sisters who adored her, or the senior brothers who always liked to tease her. Su Zime looked around, and although the battle had ended quite some time ago, a trace of remaining demonic chi could still be faintly sensed. The sun devouring acts of the sun-devouring emperor. After a moment of thought, Su Zime came to a conclusion. He glanced at the others who were still looking around and approached Nie Xingqing, whispering, "Perhaps I know who the murderer is." "Who?" Nie Xingqing turned her head in an instant, her aura surging like a torrent. "How about we make a deal?" Su Zime said with a smile. Nie Xingqing looked at Su Zime for a long time before asking, "What do you want?" "You've obtained the legacy of the ancestor of wind, haven't you?" Su Zime asked. Nie Xingqing nodded. This wasn't a well-kept secret, and it was precisely because she had been recognized by the ancestor of wind that she was able to suppress everyone in the immortal spirit sect and become the saintess. "In the legacy of your ancestor of wind, there's a painting, isn't there?" Su Zime said with a smile. "What painting?" Nie Xingqing pondered for a moment, asking with curiosity. "It's no fun if you do it like this," Su Zime said, shaking his head and turning to leave. "Wait a minute, there are several paintings in the legacy of the ancestor of wind." "I don't know which one you're talking about." Nie Xingqing stopped. Su Zime hurriedly said, "That painting is a self-portrait of your ancestor of wind." Su Zime said with a smile, "Let's make a deal. You give me the painting, and I'll tell you who the murderer is." "What do you want with the self-portrait of our ancestor of wind?" Nie Xingqing asked puzzledly. "I've studied many historical figures before, and I heard that your ancestor of wind was quite a beauty, so I wanted to see it for myself." Su Zime said with a smile, "If you just want to take a look, I can bring it out for you right now, but if you want the whole painting, that's not possible." Nie Xingqing shook her head and said, "I don't have the authority to give away the legacy of an ancestor." "So, there's no room for negotiation?" Su Zime said, shaking his head with a smile, then walked towards the holy vessel. This time Nie Xingqing didn't stop Su Zime. She stood there pondering over his retreating figure. She wasn't a fool, and she certainly wouldn't believe something like wanting just a glimpse of one's appearance. There must be a purpose to Su Zime wanting that painting. She hadn't given much thought to the painting before, but now it seemed there must be a use for it that she was unaware of. The death of her foster father and the vengeance of her sect's destruction could be slowly investigated. There would always be traces if she really couldn't find any leads, and if she could bear the destiny in the future, she could directly come to the true martial holy sect and force Su Zime to tell her. But if that painting was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, missing it would mean she'd never have the chance again. After a long investigation at the Heavenly Sword sect and confirming there were no survivors, everyone boarded the holy vessel and headed towards the Holy Spring sect. During this time, Nie Xingqing's gaze was constantly fixed on Su Zime. She was even thinking if the fall of the Heavenly Sword sect could be related to Su Zime. Su Zime leaned back in his chair with his eyes closed, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Whether or not Nie Xingqing was willing to hand over the painting wasn't important. What mattered was that after his subtle hints, he was certain Nie Xingqing had the painting with her. After half a day's journey, the holy vessel slowly arrived at the Holy Spring sect, a sect with a long history. Chapter 88. The origin of the Holy Spring sect also carries a tint of legend. It is said that a long time ago, a sage passed through the extreme west region and discovered a spiritual spring there. This spiritual spring is a treasure that can only emerge once the spiritual energy of heaven and earth concentrates to a certain extent. It's an excellent location for many sects to establish their foundations. The sage was also known for his love of charity. around the spiritual spring. He taught his ways and attracted villagers from several nearby villages. Everyone who came here could obtain water from the spiritual spring. Over time, the fame of the sage grew, and more cultivators gathered at the spiritual spring. In the end, everyone suggested that they might as well establish a sect right there, and they called the sage of the Holy Spring. The sect was also named the Holy Spring Sect. Several hundred years later, when the sage was about to leave the Holy Spring Sect, he passed the position of the sect leader to his eldest disciple. At that time, the Holy Spring Sect was still a small force wavering between the third-rate and the second-rate. Several more centuries passed, and a disciple of the Holy Spring Sect inadvertently saved a man upon leaving. The man promised that he would repay the disciple for saving his life in the future. At the time, no one took it seriously, thinking it was just a jest from the man, who would have known that 100 years later, the man's voice would spread throughout the Yuan Central Road. Today, I carry the destiny of heaven to ascend as a great emperor, named Dustless, a monarch over the 8 desolates. I claim dominion within this universe. No one at that time could have imagined that the man saved inadvertently by the disciple would carry the destiny of heaven and become the great emperor of that era. Since then, the Holy Spring Sect entered a phase of rapid development, and that disciple was also chosen as the sect master of the Holy Spring Sect. During the era that the Dustless Emperor carried the destiny of heaven, the Holy Spring Sect was under his protection and instantly became a first-rate force. Speaking of which, the wife of the Dustless Emperor was the ancestor of wind. Hence, the relationship between the Holy Spring Sect and the Immortal Spirit Sect has always been very good, thanks to the Emperor. The holy vessel slowly descended at the entrance of the Holy Spring Sect. Looking down from above, the Holy Spring Sect, although not comparable to the true martial Holy Sect, but also had ancient trees reaching to Tsongtian, with rivers hanging upside down 300 feet, shrouded in clouds and mist. The mountains were like prisons, the towers like blades, with kilometer-long beasts dragging a mountain peak around the sect gate, and disciples bringing down thunderous, heaven-splitting, earth-dividing slashes with a single sword. Even more peculiar were the springs visible all around within the sect gate, with some bursting open like seas of flowers, some roaring like giant beasts, some transforming into a rain of swords, and some shooting straight up into the sky for hundreds of meters, before hanging upside down, merging the water and sky into one. Elder Tianjin, Elder Fanyun, long time no see. The sect master of the Holy Spring Sect, Luo Changhe, together with a group of elders, came out of the sect to welcome the two. Sect Master Luo, it's been a while. Your cultivation seems to have progressed quite a bit, Elder Tianjin said with a smile. Where, please come in quickly. The meal is already prepared. The inner gate competition is set for tomorrow morning, Luo Changhe said with a smile, ushering everyone in. When the group arrived at the Holy Spring Sect, it was already afternoon after dinner, as dusk fell and the sky gradually darkened. The inner gate competition was scheduled for the morning of the next day, and everyone's rooms were prepared well in advance. Nie Xingqing, alone, returned to her room and started to examine the painting of the ancestor of wind. The woman on the painting was depicted so vividly. Dressed in a light blue sheer garment, she truly seemed as if she would come to life. She appeared like a fairy descending from the 9th heaven, compelling one to admire the painter's profound skills. Just as Nie Xingqing was at her wit's end, there was a sudden knock at the door. Nie Xingqing was startled and quickly hid the painting, then slowly opened the door. "Why is it you?" Nie Xingqing looked at the person outside the door and asked with a frown. Xiao Gizi smiled and said, "I've come to discuss a deal with you." "Not interested," Nie Xingqing said as she was about to close the door. But Xiao Gizi stopped her. "Don't you want to know who killed your foster father?" Nie Xingqing pondered for a moment, then opened the door wider. "Let's talk about that deal." Xiao Gizi walked into the room and said, "If you help me kill Suzime, they'll tell you." "That's impossible." Nie Xingqing shook her head. Suzimai's identity was no small matter. He was the son of the deputy sect master of the true martial holy sect. If she killed him and angered Su Qingshan, once the immortal spirit sect and the true martial holy sect went to war, she would definitely be used to appease the anger. Even if she was the saintess of the immortal spirit sect, it wouldn't matter. There was no doubt about that. What if I told you that the Heavenly Sword sect was slaughtered by people sent by Su Zime? Xiao Gizi was not in a rush and spoke with a smile. That joke isn't funny at all? Nie Xingqing stared at Xiao Gizi and said flatly. I have no reason to lie to you. I've always been by his side. I know many of his affairs. Xiao Gizi said. Why would you tell me all this? Nie Xingqing asked with a frown. Although I'm his subordinate, that guy never treated me as a human. He is cruel and tyrannical. I want him dead. Xiao Gizi looked intently at Nie Xingqing and said fiercely. You don't have to be afraid. If our plan works, no one will find out. It just so happens that we are in the Holy Spring sect. We can pin the blame on them. Let me think about it, Nie Xingqing said after a moment of silence. Although you are now the saintess of the Immortal Spirit sect, that position isn't very secure, is it? Xiao Gizi said with a hint of a smile. As far as I know, Su Zime slaughtered the Heavenly Sword sect because it concerned the inheritance of a great emperor. If you kill him, the great emperor's inheritance will be yours, and we'll split his resources equally. What do you think? Think about it. Being the son of Su Qingshan, would he lack cultivation resources? With these resources, you could definitely secure your position as the saintess, and even contend for destiny in the future to great benefit. How should we do it? Nie Xingqing looked at Xiao Gizi, her eyes blazing as she asked. The death of her foster father left her indecisive, but the inheritance of the great emperor and the vast cultivation resources were the final straws that broke the camel's back. Tonight is the best opportunity to act. Once the inner gate competition ends tomorrow and he leaves the Holy Spring sect, we will have no hope, Xiao Gizi said. From what I've observed, this man is quite lustful. You just need to seduce him a bit with your beauty. Then put this powder in his drink for him to swallow, and everything will be resolved. Xiao Gizi spoke as he took out a small packet of medicine. What is this? Nie Xingqing asked with a frown. Vein-sealing powder, Xiao Gizi replied. Anyone below the esteemed vein realm who ingests it will have their vein gates sealed, becoming as vulnerable as an ordinary person, and at that point he will be at our mercy. Why not just kill him? That would be safer, Nie Xingqing asked, puzzled. Wouldn't death be too kind for him? I want to torture him bit by bit, to return him the suffering he's caused over the years, Xiao Gizi said with a ferocious expression. Chapter 89. Nie Xingqing had initially been somewhat shocked by Xiao Gizi's words, but now, observing Xiao Gizi's expression, she felt certain that Su Zime must have treated the other so harshly that it twisted Xiao Gizi's psychology, making him capable of doing anything. I understand. Nie Xingqing took the medicine bag and said indifferently, Then prepare yourself tonight and be careful on your way to Su Zime's room. Don't let anyone see you or it'll be hard to explain later. Xiao Gizi cautioned. Nie Xingqing nodded and watched Xiao Gizi's retreating figure. Her gaze pensive for a long time, eventually she let out a long breath as if she had made up her mind, thinking that the brave might perish but the timid would starve. She sat down in front of the mirror and applied her makeup meticulously. Then, taking advantage of the cover of the dark, windy night, she silently made her way to Su Zime's room. At this moment, Su Zime had just taken off his coat and was getting ready to sleep when he heard a knock at the door. Who is it? He opened the door and saw Nie Xingqing standing there. A wave of rose fragrance rushed to greet him. Her face was adorned with exquisite makeup, the kind that was powerfully seductive. Senior Su, there is something I'd like to discuss with you, Nie Xingqing said softly, her eyes seductive as silk. Su Zime's smile hung at the corners of his mouth, revealing an all-too-knowing grin as he hurriedly welcomed Nie Xingqing in. Junior sister, take a seat and have some water. Let your senior brother put on some clothes. It's somewhat indecent like this, Su Zime said as he filled a teacup with water from the table before turning toward the bed to get dressed. It's fine, Nie Xingqing smiled and, positioning her body to block the view to the teacup, emptied the small packet of medicine into it. After Su Zime had dressed, Nie Xingqing picked up the teacup and offered it to Su Zime, smiling, Senior brother, let's have a drink. All right, Su Zime took the teacup, squinting at Nie Xingqing with a smile, blissfully unaware as he drank the tea down. Oh right, junior sister, you mentioned you had something to discuss. What is it? Su Zime asked with intrigue after finishing his drink. What's the rush, senior brother? Nya Xingxing smiled, leaning her head a bit closer to Su Zime's ear and whispered flirtatiously, was it you who orchestrated the slaughter at the Heavenly Sword Sect? Su Zime's face changed instantly, disbelief written all over as he pointed at Nya Xingxing, his voice urgent. How do you know about that? So, it was you. Nya Xingxing's expression turned cold as she looked at Su Zime. I'll kill you, Su Zime said in exasperation, raising his hand to strike Nya Xingxing, but just as he began to mobilize his spiritual energy, he felt his body go weak and collapsed to the ground. Panicked, Su Zime looked up at Nya Xingxing. What have you done to me? Nothing much, just put some vein-sealing powder into the tea I gave you just now, Nya Xingxing said with a light chuckle. You vicious woman. Su Zime clutched his chest, his eyes shut, resignedly said, in the Game of Thrones, you win or you die, I accept my fate. Go ahead and kill me. Nya Xingxing snorted coldly and began to walk towards Su Zime, her spiritual energy surging around her, clearly intent on taking his life. But after only a few steps, Nya Xingxing felt something was amiss. Her vein gates were being sealed one after another. Her aura fluctuated wildly before finally all strength left her body, and she slumped to the ground like a deflated balloon. Junior sister, what's the matter? Hurry up and kill your senior brother, don't be soft-hearted. Su Zime's voice continued to echo nearby. At this moment, Nya Xingxing suddenly felt a dreadful premonition. Her gaze turned to the teacup she had used just moments before. Su Zime had by now gotten up completely unharmed. Shaking his head in pity, he walked over to Nya Xingxing, crouched down in front of her, and said with regret, Junior sister, greed does one in. Why are you so naive? The room's door burst open and Xiao Gizi slipped in with a ghost-like stealthiness. He said with a beaming smile, Senior brother, my acting skills passed the test, didn't they? They were SOSO, Su Zime said with a chuckle. Someone like your senior brother could live off his looks while you can only rely on your acting. Seeing this, Nya Xingxing could no longer be in the dark about being thoroughly deceived by these two people. It is often said that wealth moves the heart, and many people's intelligence seems to drop when faced with temptation. Nya Xingxing gave Xiao Gizi a look filled with seething rage. This guy had spoken differently when he was in her room, saying how Su Zime didn't treat him like a person, even mentioning his lechery and claiming that he would torture Su Zime bit by bit. In reality, it was all a deceitful act, and his gestures and facial expressions were so convincingly done. At this moment, Nya Xingxing realized that not only were her vein gates sealed, leaving her body weak, but she couldn't even make a sound when she tried to speak. She knew that the tea she had just drunk had definitely been tampered with. What do you think I should do with you? Su Zime asked as he lifted Nya Xingxing's chin, looking into her eyes filled with loathing while smiling. Afterward, Su Zime and Xiao Gizi changed into black clothes, which covered their entire bodies. Xiao Gizi, though unaware of Su Zime's intentions, didn't inquire further. Once they had changed, the two of them took advantage of the dark, windy night and secretly moved Nya Xingxing to a deserted artificial hill behind the Holy Spring sect. Senior brother, what do we do next? Xiao Gizi asked curiously. Don't talk, just wait for an hour, Su Zime said softly. Then Su Zime took off Nya Xingxing's storage ring and, as he had hoped, obtained the painting from inside. As for the other resources in the storage ring, apart from a few good items, Su Zime gave the rest to Xiao Gizi. After all, Xiao Gizi had always been dealing with matters for him, and his cultivation had only just broken through to the true vein realm. His realm couldn't be neglected. An hour later, Su Zime looked at Nya Xingxing, who was now in total panic, gripping her throat. He said in a low tone, before you die, I don't mind telling you that it wasn't I who slaughtered the Heavenly Sword sect. It was a guy named Chu Yang who did it. Although he hailed from a small place called Qingyang Village, his luck is not insignificant. I'm killing you now because he offered me some conditions I couldn't refuse. I only hope you won't blame me. Seeing Nya Xingxing utterly panicked, trying to resist but completely powerless, Su Zime suddenly increased the grip on her throat. A night passed in silence, with the dawn's first light scattering like a halo, and the dew still lingering on the tender green grass from the previous night. Under the sunlight, it glistened and sparkled. Inside the Holy Spring sect, the preparations for the inner gate competition were underway with great fervor that morning. When people from the Immortal Spirit sect and true martial holy sect assembled, only Nya Xingxing was missing. Elder Fanyan had not yet managed to send someone to call for Nya Xingxing when news arrived like a bolt from the blue. Chapter 90. A disciple stumbled upon Nie Zinking's corpse when passing by the rockery. When Luo Changhe arrived at the rockery with everyone, Elder Fan Yun went pale at the sight before him. It's too late, Luo Changhe, after checking Nie Zinking's condition, said with a heavy tone, shaking his head. Sect Master Luo, this happened at your Holy Spring sect, shouldn't you give an explanation? Elder Fan Yun spoke in a cold tone. Please be assured, Elder Fan Yun, I have already ordered the sect gate to be sealed and no one is allowed to leave the sect. Luo Changhe nodded. Once the inner gate competition is over, I will thoroughly investigate every disciple. Su Zime glanced at Luo Changhe and felt something was off. Logically, with a sect saintess dead in their own sect, shouldn't they be conducting a thorough investigation immediately? The inner gate competition could be delayed and pushed back, but judging by Luo Chang's attitude, it seemed that the relationship between the Holy Spring sect and the Immortal Spirit sect wasn't as good as imagined. Sect Master Luo, are you planning to shield the murderer, waiting until after the inner gate competition ends, by which time everything would have already been decided? Elder Fan Yun said with an embarrassed look. Elder Fan Yun, you should speak with evidence. Luo Changhe snorted. Just because someone died in our Holy Spring sect doesn't mean it's entirely our fault. Maybe it was someone you offended and they were pursued here. Luo Changhe continued, we also have a responsibility for this matter. But I'm not shirking it. I said we would investigate immediately after the inner gate competition is over. Luo Changhe, are you taking revenge on our Immortal Spirit sect for the incident that year? Elder Fan Yun, angered, directly called out his name. One must know that Nie Zinking's death was not just a complete waste of the sect's many years of cultivation. Moreover, she carried the inheritance of the ancestor of wind. If the inheritance were lost, she would be the sinner of the Immortal Spirit sect. I'm not that petty. But as to who is behind this, it's too early to jump to conclusions. Luo Changhe spoke indifferently. While our Holy Spring sect admits its own responsibility, I ask Elder Fan Yun not to blame everything on us without evidence. You want evidence, right? I will give it to you now. Elder Fan Yun's gaze fixed, and the aura of the Emperor Pulse realm surged around her. The spiritual energy around her began to condense, and a faint blue swirl appeared behind her. As the vortex appeared, Elder Fan Yun slightly drew her hands apart in midair. In that instant, in everyone's eyes, Elder Fan Yun's hands seemed to embody a special meaning, as if transcending time and space. A white curtain appeared before her. What is this? Luong asked Suzime, who was at his side. I don't know. Suzime shook his head. Time reversal. This is the ability of Elder Fan Yun's true fate emergence. Elder Tianjin elaborated from the side. As long as it's within 24 hours, Elder Fan Yun can use time reversal to see what the deceased experienced in the hour before death. That's a nice ability, Luong commented with interest. Martial artists could condense their true fate while in the empty vein realm, and once they reached the Emperor Pulse realm, they could manifest their true fate. Since everyone's condensation of true fate is different, the abilities upon true fate emergence naturally vary. As Elder Fan Yun's hands moved over the curtain, images shockingly appeared in the previously blank space. Everyone watched the unfolding images with rapt attention. On a night with a black moon and high winds, Nie Xingqing lay motionless behind the rockery, with two men in black sitting beside her. The pair sat in silence for nearly an hour, while Elder Fan Yun wore a somewhat unsightly expression to one side. She didn't know if these people had come prepared. Knowing her abilities, they deliberately dressed in black and masked their faces, then spent an hour to ensure she couldn't find out anything. As the scene was about to end, one of the figures clad in black suddenly stood up, reached out, and grasped Nie Zinking's neck. A deep voice came forth. I'm not afraid to tell you before you die, it wasn't I who slaughtered the Heavenly Sword Sect, but a guy named Chu Yang. Even though he hails from a small village known as Qingyang Village, his luck is anything but small. After the man in black finished those words, he ended Nie Zinking's life. The crowd watched as the two people headed in the direction of the Holy Spring Sect's gate. Chuyang, Qingyang Village. Elder Fan Yun uttered these words through clenched teeth as she watched the content on the screen. The aura of the Emperor Pulse realm burst forth from her, reaching the sky and shaking the surrounding space. Elder Fan Yun, please calm down, Luo Changhe hurriedly interjected. It's not your Holy Spring Sect saintess who died, of course you're not in a hurry. Elder Fanyun said with an embarrassed and displeased expression. Sect Master Luo, due to the matter concerning our sect saintess, I must attend to it as soon as possible. As for the internal sect competition of your sect, I shall abstain for now. It's fine, the matter concerning the saintess is more important. I will also conduct a thorough investigation within the Holy Spring sect, Luo Changhe replied indifferently. I hope this matter has nothing to do with your Holy Spring sect, Elder Fanyun said, and then she promptly left with the other disciples from the Immortal Spirit sect. Watching the imposing back of Elder Fanyun as she left, Luo Changhe smiled and said to Elder Tianjin, Brother Tianjin, don't mind this. No one wanted such a thing to happen. It's not a problem. Elder Tianjin shook his head and smiled. Afterwards, Elder Tianjin led Su Zime and a few others towards the site of the inner gate competition of the Holy Spring sect. Meanwhile, Luo Changhe secretly gathered some of the Holy Spring sect's elders and issued an order, aside from those inner sect disciples currently in competition, conduct a thorough search of every other place in the sect, especially any disciple acting suspiciously. Capture first, then interrogate. Brother Lu, is there some story between Sect Master Luo and Elder Fanyun? Along the way, Su Zime asked curiously, I've only heard about it myself. I'll tell you more when we get back, Luong whispered in response. On the other hand, Elder Fanyun rode the monster beast Song 1 at full speed back to the Immortal Spirit sect. She had to start her investigation with Qingyang village and this crucial figure, Chu Yang. At this moment in the true martial holy sect, Bailey Xiao had been restless since returning from Goose Southern Peak. She didn't know how Su Zime came to learn of Chu Yang's situation, but leaving Chu Yang to stay in Qingyang village indefinitely would eventually lead to danger, and Su Zime could continue to use this matter to blackmail her. Therefore, she called Xue Qianxue over, instructing her to take Chu Yang away from Qingyang village or find a place to settle him down so she could have peace of mind. In case Su Zime one day insists on killing Chu Yang, she would not be able to stop him.